You are listening to episode number 89 of the Everything Ham Radio podcast. In this episode, we're talking with Vance and November 3 Victor Echo Mike. We're talking about the worldwide Flora and Fauna, or how it's known here in the U.S., the Parks on the Air. So stick around. Hey y'all, welcome back to the Everything Ham Radio podcast. My name is Curtis, my call sign is Kilo 5 Charlie Lima Mike, and I am your host for this podcast. This podcast comes out every Thursday, or every other Thursday now. This is actually the first episode on my new schedule, and I'm going to be releasing every other week rather than every week. And if you listen to the previous podcast, you'll know why. But basically, back in July, my wife and I adopted 4 kids, and so now they're totally free and clear ours. And with that comes the greater responsibility of providing for them and stuff like that. And then on top of that, I'm starting a sign carving business, which I think all of y'all that have purchased signs from me. I have 2 of them sitting here in front of me right now that I'm going to be working on this weekend. One of them is from John, Kilo Echo 5 Echo Tango X-Ray, and the other one is from Jeff, I want to say, Kilo 4 Golf Delta Lima. I have those boards laid out here, getting ready to carve them, and probably by the time this thing goes live, they will be in their hands. So in September, I had a launch sale where you could get them at 50% off. They were $15. They have gone up in price now to full price, but you can still get them. I am still making them, of course, and also making some call sign desk nameplates or your name or whatever. All these are totally customizable. I know the pictures that I've been posting are just of the ham radio tower or of the ham radio 360 up till the time that I'm recording this. Hopefully I will get permission from these 2 gentlemen to use those pictures as well, to spread the word. So again, totally customizable. If you want to sign, please hit me up on it for it. Shoot me an email at k5clm@everythinghamradio.com with your logo. Let me take a look at it, and if we'll talk some specifics with what kind of letters you want, what you want to say on it, stuff like that. And then all you have to do is go over to my swag store that you can find at everythinghamradio.com / swag store, all one word. Go on there, click the purchase button, and away you'll go, and I'll get it carved up for you, send it in the mail, and all that good stuff. So please help me start my business with this and get this thing going. Help me bring in some extra stuff, extra money for my family. But on top of that, if you want to help support this podcast in other ways, there are several ways you can do it. You can do a one-time donation through PayPal, which I recently had one, and I don't remember his name off the top of my head. But I thank him for that. And then you can also become a per episode contributor through Patreon, or you can simply shop on Amazon.com using my affiliate link. And all the information about how to do that can be found on my support page at everythinghamradio.com /support. You can find me on Facebook. The group is at facebook.com /groups /Everything Ham Radio. I have the page on facebook.com /Everything Ham Radio. I'm on YouTube at youtube.com /Everything Ham Radio. I have currently, basically just all I have on there right now is just the podcast episodes that you can watch on YouTube. I am planning on doing something a little bit more in the future with some actual live video, maybe recording myself, recording a podcast or something like that. So that is in the works. Probably won't happen till after the first of the year. I'm also on Twitter, which is probably where you can find me the easiest, and you can find me there at K5CLM. So this episode, I am bringing back a former guest, and his name is Vance Martin. His call sign is November 5 Victor Echo Mike. Vance Martin was on episode number 87, where we talked about traveling with your ham radio gear. And at the end of that episode, you might remember that he mentioned about the worldwide flora and fauna that he operates while he's traveling. So he was nice enough to come back and talk to us this episode about what the worldwide flora and fauna program is. So without, I guess, any more from me, let's go ahead and get in with the interview with Vance and learn about the worldwide flora and fauna, or as it's known here in the U.S., Parks on the Air. Hey everybody, we are here again this time with Vance Martin, November 3 Victor Echo Mike. And if you'll remember, he was with us a couple episodes ago where we were talking about... what were we talking about, Vance? Totally slipped my mind.
We were talking about traveling with radio gear.
That's what it was. Yeah, that was what it was. Yeah. Well, Vance was nice enough at the end of the episode, if you remember right. We talked a little bit about a thing called Worldwide Flora and Fauna, and he was nice enough to agree to come back on and talk to us about it because it's something that I've been interested in ever since the National Parks on the Air. So let's talk about a little bit first about what it is. But before we do that, just in case somebody didn't hear a couple episodes ago, why don't you give us a brief history of who you are and how you got started in ham?
You bet, yeah. So Vance Martin, and I've been a ham since 2014, so not too terribly long. And like a lot of folks, I got exposed to it as a kid, actually through my dad. My dad was an electronics technician for years, and so we used to build little kits and stuff together. And I built a shortwave receiver kit when I was younger, and tuning around on that was the first time I actually got to hear ham radio operators. And then it wasn't until I was older and started doing a lot of traveling for work that I ended up getting back into ham radio, just because I had this bug all along and remembered it as something that might help pass the time while I do all my travel for work. So that's how I ended up back into it again. And a lot of my operations, because I do it a lot while I'm traveling for work, have been portable, which is why I talked about traveling with radio gear and how we ended up getting ready to start this conversation, because a lot of my work trips are activations for this program.
Oh, wow. So if y'all want to hear about Vance's traveling and how he does it and how he packs for it and operates and all that good stuff, go back to episode number 87 and listen to that. And you can find the show notes for it and listen to it on the page itself at everythinghamradio.com/podcast/87. So this time around, we're talking about the worldwide flora and fauna. So what exactly is the worldwide flora and fauna?
Yeah, so I'll start with just the definitions of the words. For anybody who doesn't know, flora is plants and fauna is animals. That's something I think most people know, but they are not normal words in the lexicon. So that's what worldwide flora and fauna means just by definition. And really what it is it's a conglomerate of park activation programs. So a lot of different countries and areas of the world have their own park activation program, and then they fall under this big parent organization of WWFF. So you can almost think of it as like the United Nations of park activation programs. So WWFF is the parent, and then each continent has a coordinator. So for us in North America, that's Jeff, and I think his call is Kilo Bravo 3 Zulu Uniform Kilo. He'll let me know if I got it wrong. And then each country has a coordinator that handles the details for their country's program. So the U.S. program that falls under Worldwide Flora and Fauna is KFF, and we just kind of colloquially refer to it as Parks on the Air or POTA. And Jason, W3AAX, is the U.S. coordinator. So just like there's the U.S. program, there's ONFF in Belgium, VKFF in Australia, and overall there's about 49 different countries that have their own program under the WWFF umbrella.
Wow. So how did it get to Flora and Fauna as a radio event?
Yeah, so it actually started quite a long time ago. So Worldwide Flora and Fauna predates NAPOTA by quite a while. It actually started in, I believe, the year was 2008, and it was the efforts of a Russian club, and it was actually in conjunction with something, and I don't remember the details exactly, but it was an environmental program that they were involved with that initially started their idea of, hey, let's start a park activating program to help bring attention to natural spaces and things like that. So when they first started it, it was actually only WFF, so it was, I think, just World Flora and Fauna. And then as it grew over time, it eventually rebranded into WWFF in 2012 and just continued growing from there. But it really started with the efforts of some of those clubs in Russia and Eastern Europe and Europe.
So is it, I mean, we had last year, I guess it was, maybe when we had the national parks on the air. It's basically like that, but just more of a worldwide thing. Am I understanding that right?
Yep. Yeah, that's really what it's like. So the NAPOTA that everybody's very familiar with that we did in the U.S. last year, it's very similar to that. They're actually almost identical programs except for some very minor rule differences, which we'll touch on then. So really the biggest difference between NAPOTA and Worldwide Flora and Fauna is that Worldwide Flora and Fauna is an evergreen program. It just keeps running and has been since 2008 when it started. So you can think of it more like Summits on the Air or Islands on the Air, but with the parks theme instead of mountains and islands and so forth.
So it's not that I have to get all these contacts in a year. It's pretty much I can do it whenever.
Yep. Yeah, it's when you look at statistics, they keep statistics for all time, by year, by country, so there's all kinds of things you can look at. Yep.
So with the national parks on the air that we had here last year, it was just the national parks in here in the U.S. Is it just the national parks like worldwide, or is there more parks than just the national ones? I mean, it's like state or local. Can I go out and do the city park that I have, or?
Yeah, so the city park, probably not. The list of parks that's available for activating within the U.S. piece of the program is available on, there's actually two websites that'll take you to the same place, parksontheair.com or kff-wwff.com. The official list of parks there is there, but essentially what it is pretty much all of the national parks that were part of NAPOTA, but then also just about all of the state parks in the country. The one difference is that things that were national parks like rivers and trails that don't really have a set geographic area, those aren't included in WWFF. So there are some national parks that aren't in this program, but most are. And the state parks being in this program more than make up for it. So NAPOTA had 400 or so parks with the national parks, and with the national and state parks as part of Worldwide Flora and Fauna, there's actually over 4,000 parks in the U.S. that can be activated.
Wow. That's awesome. That's a lot of parks. So if you can't find a park to activate, you got issues.
Yeah, and when you go to the website, it's a very nice interface. There's a map with the list, so you can click around on the map to find parks. You can search in the list by, state, park names, and so forth. But when you look at that map, it's if you zoom out so you can see the whole country, it's just covered with red dots almost so that you can't see anything in between. So there's a lot of parks to be able to go play radio in as part of this program.
Wow. So what is is there like a certain frequency that I need to be operating on if I'm working the WWFF, or can I use any frequency, or?
You can use any frequency you want. WWFF it's another one of these non-contest things where it's not a contest, but they keep score. So because it's not a contest, just like Napoto is not a contest officially, there's no frequencies that are off limits. For big contests and things, they usually say stay off the mark bands. But since this is just a activity program, those aren't off limits. So any frequency you want is fine. By convention, however, folks do tend to congregate around frequencies that end in the number 44. So if you're a 40-meter CW person, the POTA people are usually hanging around 7.044. Voice in the U.S., they often end up around 7.244. On 20 meters, they end up at 14.044 or 14.244. So that's kind of the trend that you can follow through all the bands if you're just spinning around to try to find folks.
Okay, so what's up with the 44 thing?
Yeah. So the 44 thing is a nod to the nature spaces that the program is designed to draw attention to. So the first 4 is actually symbolic of the 4 points on the compass, so north, south, east, west. And the second 4 is the 4 elements, so earth, wind, air, and fire. So that's the 44. And people who participate in the program, you really end up using 44 where everybody else would use 73. So if you're listening to somebody activating a park, a lot of times at the end of a contact, you'll hear them say 44 instead of 73. Or sometimes they'll say 73 and 44. So,
All righty then. Very, very symbolic, very interesting. So, yeah, that's. So not only do you say 44 at the end, you also work on 44.
Yep.
Or at least ending in 4. I noticed there's some of them that are the frequencies that are listed are actually 2-4, like the CW 7.024 and the 10.124.
Yep, and some of it has to do with just what frequencies are available in the different bands. Mm-hmm. So ending in 4 or 44 is usually where folks shoot for. Yeah. But that's just kind of a I guess a fun thing to do. Yep.
The 7.024 and the 10.124 is the only 24 I see. Everything else is 44. And actually, hey, we'll have a list of all the conventional frequencies in the show notes of today's episode. So let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the operating rules or procedures maybe that are involved with the Worldwide Flora and Fauna.
Sure. Yeah, the rules are there are some unique things about the rules. So because it's like, I gave the comparison earlier of the UN, and you can really think of it as being the same thing. So WWFF has its rules globally, but it's kind of like the global UN rules where these are the rules, but each country can kind of do its own thing, so they can either adopt those rules or not for their program. So the U.S. program is pretty much the WWFF rules to the T, with one major difference, and that is in the global program to activate a park as a successful activation, and in wwff.co, the website, you'll see them use the term quorum quite a lot. So if you are activating a park and you want to reach a quorum, in the global program you need 44 contacts, but in the U.S. we're only required 10 contacts, just like you were for Napoto. So that's one of the differences. Other than that, a lot of the rules are very similar. The only real limits it puts on an activation is that you and all of your equipment have to be in the park. But outside of that, you can set up portable running on batteries. You can use AC power if it's available. You can operate from your car. There are some programs like SOTA that are more restrictive, where you're not allowed to be operating from a vehicle. But WWFF, because it's more like National Parks on the Air was as far as how you're allowed to operate, it's actually a very accessible program, which is great. So if people that have mobility issues and things like that, as long as you can get in your car and drive to the park, you can you can participate as an activator if you want, even just from the car sitting in a parking lot. One of the other things that's different in the WWFF program than National Parks on the Air is that in National Parks on the Air, if you recall, there were some places you could activate where you could get like 2-fer and 3-fer credit. So there was either a trail that went through another park, so you could get credit for 2 at once. Worldwide Flora and Fauna doesn't allow 2-fers and 3-fers, so you can only claim credit for 1 unit at a time. So if you were set up at a place where there's a smaller unit inside of a larger unit, you would have to do 2 separate activations. So you'd have to run and make all your contacts and then set up and then start calling again, using the information for the second unit if you wanted to try to kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone while you were there. But other than that, the rules are very similar to what we were accustomed to with Napoda.
Is there kind of like a minimum time limit or anything, or just once you get your 10 contacts, you can activate the park?
Yep, just once you get your 10 contacts. There was a time up until sometime in the middle of 2016 where there was a 2-hour minimum, so you had to be in the park for at least 2 hours. But that rule was dropped sometime in the middle of 2016 from the entire global program. So now it's just based on contacts. So once you get in and make either your 44 contacts for global programs or 10 contacts in the U.S., then you're good to go.
44 contacts. That seems like an awful lot to do. I mean, that could take you several hours.
Yeah. The full 44 contacts. It depends on the time of day. There are some folks. One of the operators that's very active in the program, Brian, in his name, and it's Kilo Zero Alpha Tango Zulu. Between his methods and his operating style, he can create a pileup where there's horrible band conditions. I don't know how the man does it, but he will knock out 44 contacts in no time flat. A combination of having a pretty decent setup when he goes and just really knowing how to handle a pileup. 44 he can knock out real fast. For me, it usually takes me a little bit of time to work through the 44 contacts. But if you don't get to 44, if you've at least made it to the 10, you can at least qualify for, some of the U.S. awards.
Wow. So let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue our discussion about worldwide flora and fauna. So stick around, y'all. We'll be back after a word from West Mountain Radio. Whether you're working from home or out in the field, doing field day, a special event station, or maybe a Parks on the Air activation, you're going to need power, right? This is where the West Mountain Radio's DC-to-Go box comes in. The DC-to-Go boxes are great to mount your batteries in. They protect your floor when you're at home, or help carry your battery to that spot in the field. The boxes can be customized just the way you want them, or you can get a pre-made box that has a rig runner and or a super power gate built right on the side of the box. I recommend the DC-to-Go box with the Rig Runner 4007U on it. The Rig Runner 4007U can supply up to 40 amps, 12 volt, over 7 fused Anderson power pole connections, and it has a USB port on it to charge your phone. It has a solid-state push-button on-off switch, a 7-segment power display, and it has automatic power protection for over and under voltage. Check out the West Mountain Radio DC-to-Go boxes at everythinghamradio.com/WMR for more information, and to learn how to get your free USB port monitor with your purchase. Alright, y'all, we are back and we're talking with Vance, November 3 Victor Echo Mike, and we're talking about worldwide flora and fauna, or as it's known here in the U.S., Parks on the Air. So, let's talk a little bit about maybe operating on for worldwide flora and fauna a little bit. But before we do that, why is there why is it called Parks on the Air here in the U.S. rather than worldwide flora and fauna U.S.?
Yeah, really, it's just kind of ease and convention more than anything else. Because WWFF is that global program, each country that has its own program under the umbrella has some of their own little nuances. Different ways that they do things, slightly different rules. So I would just call it one of our U.S. quirks, is we like to say parks on the air. Some of it, too, is because the U.S. component of Worldwide Flora and Fauna didn't kick off until after National Parks on the Air. So even though Worldwide Flora and Fauna has been around for a while, it wasn't until NAPOTA got popular that the Worldwide Flora and Fauna folks reached out to Jason initially to say, hey, because this is so popular, do you want to get the U.S. portion of Worldwide Flora and Fauna kicked off? So Jason had spearheaded that. And because we were so used to the term, the people that were doing a lot of activating were used to the term national parks on the air. Mm-hmm. It was just an easy transition to say parks on the air. When you're calling CQ, a lot of people think it's easier to say CQ POTA than it is to say CQ Worldwide Flora and Fauna. And, that could be a mouthful after a while. So
yeah, I can see even WWFF is not an easy thing.
Yep. So really it was just what U.S. operators were used to and what's easy to say and what's easy to send with the CW key.
Cool. So can you operate both with the U.S. part of Worldwide Flora and Fauna, or can you work with both the U.S. and the worldwide as far as like awards or anything like that go?
Yeah, you can do both simultaneously. So the awards are tracked through the software that WWFF uses to accumulate the logs. So if I activate, like the closest park to me is one called Susquehannock State Park.
That's
so if I activate when I activate Susquehannock State Park, I upload my logs I actually send my logs to my coordinator, and then my coordinator uploads everything, and then those contacts count towards both the U.S. program and the global program.
So how? Tell me a little bit more how you actually log your contacts. Is there a certain format that you have to have? Do you email it? Is there a program you got to do? How does that work?
Yep. So the initial logging, like anything else, you can do your initial logging pretty much however you want. But what you need to be able to ultimately send to your coordinator, and that's just done via an email. So you look on the website to see who your area coordinator is. But what you need to send is an ADIF file, just like you would upload to Logbook of the World or anything else. The catch is that ADIF file, there's specific fields that need to be filled out for Worldwide Flora and Fauna. So it's, operator, and they use the fields in the ADIF format that are called MySig and MySig info to put the park designators in. So it can be a little funny to know exactly how to fill your log out. So to make it easy, there's a couple different things that folks do. So one is a program called Fast Log Entry that you can actually get from wwff.co, and it is .co, not .com, so that confuses folks. But you can get the Fast Log Entry program there, and it's a very basic text-based logger that you just put in the data that they need. That one works quickly, but I personally feel there's a little bit of a learning curve to it. Some people that travel with their laptops will use the N3, and I always get his call sign wrong. It's either N3 FJP or N3 FPJ, the FJP. Logging program thanks, that Scott makes. So some people will use that, and then they'll just make sure that they have all the fields they need. What I have found works really well for me, if you're an iOS user, I recommend the iOS app Hamlog, because in that you can actually create template logs. So you can create a template for soda, a template for islands on the air, and I created a template for WWFF. And on my website, I actually wrote a post where I explain how I use Hamlog, and I actually posted my template file up there for anybody that wants to grab it. So if folks do use Hamlog, they can download that template, and then it just gives you the fields you need to fill out. And when you're done, you hit the button to export the log, and then you just forward that off to your coordinator.
Awesome. You have to send me that link so I can put it in the show notes.
Yep.
So, so we got through the log. Do you know what kind of awards are there? You mentioned a little bit ago there was awards with it. What kind of awards are there?
Yeah, there's quite a few different awards. So again, each country sponsors its own awards, and in the U.S., the awards we have there are awards for both activators and also for chasers, and those have to do with the number of either parks that you activate or the number of parks that you contact as a chaser. So if you're an activator, there's certificates you get at 10, 20, 30, 40 activations. And then once you get up to the hundreds, it goes every 100 units that you activate. And then the same thing for a chaser. There's awards that you can get every 10, 20, 30, 40. One of the differences between Worldwide Flora and Fauna and like POTA, though, is when we talk about activations in the Worldwide Flora and Fauna, activations are really unit-driven, not like activation-driven like they were in POTA. So POTA, you would go, you get your 10 contacts, that was one activation. You go back to the same place, you get another 10 contacts, that's another activation. Worldwide Flora and Fauna is really unit-driven. So when I say 10 activations, it's actually 10 physically different locations, not the same place 10 times. So that's one of the other special awards that we do have is what they call a repeat offender award. So every so many contacts from the same unit, there's an award that you can get. So that encourages people to keep going back to their local parks and stay active in the program. And then there's one.
Before you go on, can you like we mentioned before, where there was like 2 or 3 state parks or national parks that were all grouped together or whatever? Can you do your 10 contacts working as one of the national parks, and then in that one and start doing it for the other one, and it count as 2 units, so to speak?
Yep. Yeah. So if you're in a place that happens to be like 2 parks in one, you could, I could start, say I'm in, and I don't off the top of my head know any places that are specifically like that, but whatever the first unit is, I could start activating. Once I get to my 10 or my 44, depending on what I'm doing, then I could just say, stop my log, start a new log, start over, and say, okay, now I'm activating unit 2, and then you could run with that one. So.
Okay. So I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. The other award that, there's actually a couple others. So there's also what we call a late shift award, which is one you get for getting to the 44 contacts between 0, and 400 UTC time. So that's kind of the late shift thing. So here in the U.S., that's basically nighttime activations. Depending if you're on East Coast or West Coast, it's something after dinner. So it's to encourage activity in the evening when everybody's home from work and stuff like that. And then the award that is one of the ones that's been getting a lot of popularity recently in the U.S. program is one that is actually combined with another program called Radar, and that award basically gives you certificates for doing radar activations in conjunction with a Worldwide Flora and Fauna activation. So I guess we'll probably want to dive into exactly what Radar is, because a lot of folks probably don't know what that is.
Yeah, I'm thinking, of a little scope that shows me where airplanes and stuff is. So please, what is Radar?
Yep. So Radar is an acronym, and it's spelled funny like an acronym. So it's capital R, lowercase a, and then capital D, capital A, capital R, and that is for Rapid Deployment Amateur Radio. So it's a program that encourages what you could consider uber portable operations. And part of radar, the idea is that you move every 5 contacts. So I set up in the park, I make 5 contacts, and then I move, make 5 more contacts, and then I move and make 5 more. And the distance you have to move between each set of contacts varies depending on your type of transportation. So if you're going by car, you have to travel 6 kilometers. If you're traveling by bike, you have to go 2 kilometers in between each set of contacts. On foot, 1 kilometer. And in the interest of accessibility, like we mentioned earlier that this program's good about, if you're traveling by wheelchair, you only have to move 500 meters between each 5 contacts. So that's the rapid deployment piece. So in conjunction with the WWFF program, when you do those moves, they can either be within the same park or between different parks, depending on how many are in the area you're working. So that's kind of a fun little thing to add on there. So every now and then you'll see folks, the very busy activators, they'll say, hey, I'm going to attempt a cheetah run, which is 5 of these radar activations in one day.
So if you were like in, say, Yosemite or something like that, you could potentially do this on foot or something like that, all in the same park.
Yep, yeah, because radar is really all about just moving those distances and setting up and doing your next set of activations. Yep.
I guess that would be a good award to go to if you're active in like SOTA, or you have a backpack portable or something like that where there's not a whole lot of setup.
Yep, yeah, and that is probably the biggest catch to that. You either need to have a very portable setup or a good mobile station and enough parks close by that you can drive between them, because most, aside from Yosemite or some of those really big parks, most places you're not going to be able to drive 6 kilometers and still be in the park. So. Mm-hmm.
So I was looking on the actual awards page, and they have one of them that's called the Unique Reference Award. What is a reference?
So reference is really the identifier for a park. So for national parks on the air, if you remember, there were numbers assigned to each park. It was like HP06. So in the Worldwide Flora and Fauna program, there are also numbers that identify each park. So all of the U.S. parks start with KFF dash and then a number. So that's really what the references are. So when we talk about unique references, that's what we're talking about, is separate physical locations.
Okay. One thing that I noticed on here with the awards on the awards page is it has the activators, the hunters, which I'm guessing are the chasers, and then it has the SWLs. How does that work?
Yep. So this program, and there's a couple programs, I think SOTA might do the same thing, but several of these large worldwide programs that are evergreen also encourage participation from shortwave listeners. So you don't even have to be a ham radio operator to participate in this. If you're a shortwave listener and you hear a ham radio operator activating a park, you can record your information on a shortwave listening card, like folks used to send regularly to shortwave stations, and you can get awards for recording the information that proves that you heard the person where they were. So you just have to record their call sign, the time they were operating, and things like that. So it's kind of a neat, I would say, like an outreach thing to folks that are non-hams, so they can still participate. And I actually have gotten a couple shortwave listening receipt cards in the mail. So there are people out there that actually do that. Every now and then I'll get a card from somebody that says, I heard you. So
cool. And there's a couple other awards there we haven't touched on yet. So there will be a link in the show notes so you can go and check out all of them. There's several others There's worked all state or works. There's a state awards one where you have 7 to 50 states in multiples of 7. Worked all references. The repeat offender that we touched on, and then there's some special awards as well. So there's a whole bunch of different awards. So you definitely check that out if you are interested at all in chasing these awards. So, how do did you have? I'm sorry. Did you want to say something?
No. I was just going to say if you're into chasing wallpaper and certificates to hang on the wall, it's definitely a fun one to participate in.
Right. Yeah. So how? I've activated some parks. I've listened to some people. I've hunted some people. How do I find out how many contacts I've made in each category? I guess you could say.
Yep. The main website where all the data is collected is the wwff.co, and on their website from the menu you can choose log search, and that is the program that consolidates all the logs that the activators submit. So you can go there, and in that section of the website, when you click around, you can look at who the top activators were. If you register with the website, you can then log on and you can look up your chaser statistics. So it would tell you which parks you contacted, how many contacts, and things like that. And there's a little bit of a learning curve to clicking around in there, but that is really because there's so much data available and so many ways you can look at it. It's very robust. So if you want to look at it and see how many parks did I activate in 2016, you can get that specific. Or if you want to say, well, as a chaser, how many times did I contact specific parks? There, you can really look up a lot of stuff in there once you get used to clicking around in it.
Cool. All right, so we're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the whole process of doing an activation. So stick around, y'all. We'll be right back after we hear from W6 or KB6NU. So stick around.
Hi, this is Dan, KB6NU, author of the No Nonsense Amateur Radio License Study Guides. My study guides have helped thousands get their license or upgrade to general class or extra class, and they can help you too. What makes them unique is my no-nonsense style. I don't bamboozle you with a lot of text. Instead, I give you just what you need to know in a simple, straightforward way that's designed to help you pass the test. One reader even told me, your study guide explained in a couple of paragraphs topics that the license manual needed a couple of pages to cover. Another wrote, the clarity and simplicity of your descriptions blew the license manual away. My study guides are available in paperback, in a variety of ebook formats, and even as audiobooks. Get your copy today. Go to kb6nu.com/ETHR for more info. Thanks.
All right, y'all, we are back with Vance Martin. Again, it's November 3, Victor Echo Mike. During the break, Vance was telling me he had some interesting story about our last sponsor, KB6NU. So, Dan, Vance, tell everybody what you told me.
You bet. Yeah, I have I guess a close encounter story with Dan. I used Dan's study guides for my technician and general tests back when I first got licensed. I actually did my tech and general in one sitting, and it was his study guides I used to do that. So I knew his call sign, and then last year during National Parks on the Air, I was doing an activation at the Women's Rights National Historic Park, and I was doing my CQ calls and working the pile up, and he called me, but I didn't recognize his call sign right away, through the jingles, and used to seeing it in writing, the KB6NU, but on the air, like everybody else, he gave it in phonetics, so he called out Kilo Bravo 6 November uniform, and I just started repeating it back out of habit, and it didn't dawn on me that it was a call sign I recognized until I started typing it into my logger. So while I'm typing, all of a sudden I recognized the call sign and I just stopped in the middle of it. Kilo Bravo, wait a minute, is this Dan? And he said, "Oh, yes, it is." So then I had to kind of pause my activation and tell him thanks for putting his study guides out there, because they helped me get licensed. So that was my on the air encounter with Dan.
Well, very good. That's one thing that we love to hear, that somebody recognizes the stuff that we do and the effort that we put forth as content creators. And when we talk to you on the air or whatever, and it just kind of clicks, and it's like, hey, you did this for me. And I'm like, hey, I don't do it for me. I do it for everybody. So that's a great story, and thank you very much for sharing that.
You bet.
Let's talk about how, or the entire process of activating a park. What all do you have to do, and how do you do it?
Yeah, so it can be as loosey-goosey or as detailed and planned as you want to make it. So the method that I usually use, and I've actually written about this in the past, the method that I use when I'm deciding a park to activate really starts with deciding where to go. So for a lot of people, they would just be picking a park close to home or somewhere they like to visit. For me, because my activations usually coincide with those business trips like we talked about a couple weeks ago, the business trip is what determines where I'm going. So that's my step one, is I know I'm going to be traveling to Florida, or I know I'm going to be going to Connecticut, wherever it is. So once I know where I'm going, then I look at, well, how long am I going to be there? Am I going to be there? Is this a day trip, or is this multiple days? So if I'm going somewhere where I'm going to be for multiple days, the first thing I actually do is go to, and this is my inside trade secret. I've never told anybody this in the past, so your audience is getting the first scoop here.
All right, y'all, listen up.
I actually, the first place I look, if I'm doing a multi-day trip somewhere, is the first place I go is the Reserve America website, which is the website that almost every state in the U.S. has contracted with for reserving campsites in their state parks. So I actually go to Reserve America and type in the place I'm going to go, and then all the state parks with available campsites pop up. So I pick something close that has a campsite, and then I'll go back to the Worldwide Flora and Fauna site just to make sure it's a park that's on the list. If it's a state park, it usually is, but I just like to verify it. If I'm not staying overnight, then I just go straight to the Worldwide Flora and Fauna site and see what parks are going to be close, and we'll just drive and activate. But that's how I pick which park I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. Once I know that, then, and these next couple things aren't required, but they're things that folks appreciate if you do. On the WWFF site, they do have an agenda, and they ask that if you're planning an activation in advance, you just publish your plans to that site. So you just go on the website and fill out a basic form. This is the park I'm going to. These are times I'm going to be there. That way folks that like to chase know where to look for you. I usually also go to the Parks on the Air Facebook group and make an event in the Facebook group so that the folks that follow along that group know that there's an event coming up. And for anybody interested in the program, I really do recommend that Facebook group, because it's very active with folks, giving notification of when they're going, where they're going, and things like that. But that's really the planning stuff. Once the day of the activation comes, when I get there, I either set up my campsite or I'll pull up in my car. I'll get my equipment ready to go, and I'll find a clear frequency and start calling CQ. And the thing that I found really helps, while I'm doing my first few CQ calls, if I have cell service at the same time I'm calling CQ, I'll do a quick note to that Facebook group, and I will also jump on the cluster and self-spot myself. And I found that once you sort of self-spot yourself, then you can start drumming up a lot of activity. Worldwide Flora and Fauna does have a very neat web app that you can get to through their site that skims the big DX clusters specifically for WWFF activations. So if you're interested in chasing parks, you can go to their website to get the links for that app, and it'll notify you when somebody's in a park. And if you're an activator, it gives a nice interface to notify the cluster that you're in a park, and it asks for the right information in the right format so that anybody chasing parks can get their notifications. So that's really my basic setup. Once I've done that, then usually the calls start coming in, and then I play radio until it's time to leave, or I get tired and need to crawl into the sleeping bag.
Now, do you go, or before you get there, or when you get there, do you go and talk to like the park rangers or the management of the park and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, or bring some pamphlets along or anything like that?
Usually the most I do when I'm checking in, because in most state parks you're checking in with one of the rangers. So I'll usually just let the rangers know, hey, I'm a ham radio guy, so you'll probably see me playing around with some of my radio stuff and setting up antennas. And they're pretty much always fine with that. I've never run into a case where anybody was, had any issue or said, well, I'm not sure you can do that. The last activation I did, I actually lucked out, and the ranger was a ham. She was actually a new ham and not very active, so that was actually kind of neat, because as soon as I said I'm a ham radio person, then she said, oh, me too, and she told me her call sign, and so then we got to chat radio a little bit. That doesn't usually happen, but it was a nice run-in. So normally I just say, this is what I'm going to be doing, and they kind of go, okay, whatever.
And she come over and get on the radio with you?
I couldn't convince her to get on the radio. I did tell her to stop by if she wanted to listen in, but she did stop by the one day. It was real nice. So I set up on the picnic table, so she stopped by and listened for 5 or 10 minutes. But she was on the clock, so obviously had to keep working.
So if you're, I guess, just there for a day or whatever, I mean, you can operate from your car or basically whatever, just at a regular state park then too.
Yep. Yeah, you can, a lot of folks have a nice mobile setup and they'll just operate from the car. Some people like to find a picnic bench or, a picnic table or pavilion to set up in. This program doesn't have any restrictions on, power or how you set up, as long as you're in the park. So it's a pretty nice one for that, because it makes it easy to activate a park.
Cool. And my mind just went blank. I hate when that happens. Ba-doop, boop, boop, ting. Yeah. I just totally lost my train of thought, It happens sometimes, and it never seems to happen, or it always seems to happen in the worst possible moment. But, so let's see, we've talked about what it is, we've talked about some of the rules and stuff, we've talked about the actual process of doing it. Can you think of anything else that we need to touch on about this?
I think we've pretty much covered a lot of the main areas that people ask about. Really, the only thing I'd like to say is, to all your listeners, please jump in and participate. WWFF as a global program is very popular and has a lot of users, but because in the U.S. we are new to it, there aren't as many people in the U.S. participating yet. So as a habitual activator, I need as many people out there chasing as possible so that it's easy for me to get my points. So even if you don't plan on going out and activating, I'll put out the official public service announcement and request to set up your cluster warnings and all that kind of stuff, that if you see folks doing WWFF or KFF activations, please work us. We don't need anything from you other than you to throw your call sign out there and let us answer you. So
I remember what it was. I actually switched tabs. That's why I didn't remember it. The day after, or the night after this episode goes live, I was looking at the agenda that we've talked about. There's actually an activation in the France Flora and Fauna on the 13th of October from 6:30 to 9:30 UTC, and it's going to be in the Bassins Versant Riviere Ellie. Something like that. But it's the FFF 2185, and it's going to be Foxtrot 5 November Lincoln X-Ray. Yeah, I didn't do that one right. But anyways, that's going to be up there. There's quite a few or there's some of them that are listed towards the end of the year. There's none of them here in the U.S. that I see up through the middle of November. But there is quite a few of them that are outside, and like he said, it's not very active, I guess you could say, in the U.S., or at least it's not listed on here. So if you want to do something, definitely check it out. I mean, so.
Yep. And that's something that I will have to admit, as American activators, we are probably not as diligent about posting stuff to the agenda on the wwff.co site as we should be. I know there are quite a few U.S. activations in between. Obviously, because it's something I participate in, I watch the clusters, and there is somebody activating a U.S. park pretty much every day. So there's a lot of activity, even if we're not diligent about posting it up there. So that's where I really recommend watching the Facebook group, because everybody, if nothing else, everybody's at least sending a note, hey, I'm setting up, I'll be on the air in 10 minutes. And something that, unfortunately, when this goes live, it'll be too late for, but September 30th and 31st is the I don't even know if it has an official name, but it's like the first annual U.S. Parks on the Air Activity Day. So there are piles of people all planning on being out in their parks the weekend of September 30th. And that's tomorrow. So September 30th and 31st.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few of them tomorrow in Camp Floyd State Park. Well, tomorrow as in when we're recording this. St. Vincent Island in Florida, Chino Hill State Parks in San Juan. On the first, there's Bear Mountain State Park. So there's quite a few of them that are listed on definitely on short notice. Another question that I remembered, is it just for phone and CW, or is like PSK 31 or TTY, stuff like that, are they used as well?
Yep, yeah, pretty much every mode is used. The only time I ran into a mode that the log search program didn't recognize was one of the parks I was set up in. I made a random Thor contact, which is a digital mode that I had never used. I just saw somebody calling CQ and Thor while I had my signal link hooked up and figured, well, I might as well try to answer it. So that was, but they quickly, right after that, I uploaded the log and they said, oh, we don't have that one in there. And they added it and it was good to go. So it's pretty much all bands, all modes are good to go. Jason, who is the U.S. coordinator, just recently did an activation, and he did a little bit of FT8 stuff. So I know you just recently talked with, might have been Rhea, about the FT8 mode. Mm-hmm. So there's a couple folks already doing some park activations with that mode as well. So
wow, cool. So I will have all the links that we've talked about in this episode in the show notes, as well as the frequencies. I will put the regional managers on there. You'll have to look them up on QRZ to get their email address, though, because I'm not gonna potentially get them any more spam than they need than they already have. So look them up on QRZ. I will have a list in the show notes. Vance, I thank you very much for coming on and talking to us about this. For those of y'all that worked the NAPOTA and you don't know about this, this is a perfect opportunity to get out and keep that bug going. And for those of y'all that didn't, bring your ham radio gear on your family camping trip or something like that, and get your kids involved, your wife involved, or just get out and work a little bit, get some fresh air.
Yep, that's what it's all about. Make nature your shack.
There you go. So Vance, once again, thank you for coming on, and I greatly appreciate your help and all your information, both in this episode and in the traveling one. So I will talk to you again sometime soon.
You bet. 73.
All right, 73 sir. All right, y'all, so that pretty much wraps it up. Again, I want to thank Vance for coming on today and talking to us about the Parks on the Air, as it's known here in the U.S., or the worldwide Flora and Fauna as it's known around the world. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for telling us about it. As you've probably guessed by now, this is basically the same thing as the National Parks in the Air program was last year, only it's not sponsored by the ARRL. It's handled by a bunch of volunteers. So get out, get to the parks, get to the state parks, national parks. There's over 4,000 of them, I believe, is what Vance said. So if there's not one close to you, then you live farther out in the boonies than I do. And I have 2 of them within 20 miles of me. So get out, try it, get your kids in the air, get your wife on the air, if that's possible. And if it is, let me know how you do it so I can get mine on the air maybe. But anyways, I want to thank my show sponsors, West Mountain Radio and Dan Romanchik, KB6NU, with the No Nonsense Study Guides. Thank you all very much for your sponsorship. I want to thank all of you, my listeners, for your continued support, whether that be just by listening and sharing, or whether it be financially. You can donate through PayPal if you'd like, just a one-time donation, or you can become a patron through Patreon and give $1 per episode. I got 2 people that do that. Thank you all very much for y'all's continued support. Also want to thank all of y'all that have shopped on Amazon through my affiliate link. That greatly helps as well. And you can find more information on how you can contribute if you'd like at everythinghamradio.com/support. One other way that you can do it and get something in return other than just my podcast is by ordering a sign. I'm starting a new sign business, or at least I'm trying to. I've sold a few of them. Last month I had a launch sale, 50% off of the new signs. I recently completed 2 of them and got them shipped out this past week. One of them was with, I believe his name is pronounced Jeff, K4GDL, made one with his logo that he uses on Facebook, and also made one for John, KE5ETX. On his, I used the Radio Scouting logo on it, and you can find a picture of those on my swag store that you can find at everythinghamradio.com/swag store. I make those. I have a call sign or name desk plate that I make. Either one of those can be found on there. You don't have to use one of the ones that I've made already. If you have your own logo or you have your own picture or something like that, shoot me an email, k5clm@everythinghamradio.com. Let me take a look at it and we can work something out. I've got a couple other ideas for some signs. One of them I posted not too long ago. Has a little tower sitting over an earth with your name on the bottom of it. Another one that I just thought up recently is a home state one. Having your name and your call sign with your home state and maybe a little dot or something like that where you live at in that state. So any one of these that you want, head over to the swag store and purchase it. Send me an email with your logo and let's see what we can do. Again, thank you all for listening and sharing this, and I guess that pretty much wraps it up. So this is K5CLM signing out. 73 y'all.